Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about some past NBA draft prospects that I was dead wrong about. And not all these guys came into the NBA when I had a YouTube channel. Some of these guys were so far back that I really maybe didn't pay as much attention to basketball, but I still felt strongly enough about these guys that it hurt and it felt bad when I was wrong about. But really quickly, before we get started, if you enjoy the NBA, then consider subscribing. I upload basically every single day. Okay, so number one is probably not a surprising one if you've watched many of my videos in the past, and it's Dennis Smith Jr., who was picked 9th overall in 2017 to the Dallas Mavericks and is now on the New York Knicks as a result of the Kristaps Porzingis trade. And this worked on a couple of levels for me. Dennis Smith is a guy that's relatively local to where I grew up. I saw him in person a couple of times when he was in high school. He went to my alma mater and my favorite school, NC State. Had a pretty good freshman season. The team overall wasn't great, but he individually was clearly an extremely talented player, and that's why he ended up going 9th overall. An incredible athlete, someone that can get to the rim pretty easily, an extremely good finisher at the rim, especially for his size. It needed to improve his handle, his vision, and his shooting a little bit, but from a physical standpoint, for someone his size, he had everything you could possibly want in a guard. But the problem is all those other things, the turnovers, the handle, the shooting, have really held him back. And realistically, if this guy hadn't gone to NC State and he wasn't from North Carolina, maybe I wouldn't have been nearly as excited about his prospects in the NBA. But I was really excited. I thought that he would be a player that not only was good, but entertaining. And especially once Luka came to Dallas, I thought they would be a pretty good pairing. And it ended up not being the case at all because Luka is so much better with the ball in his hands than Smith Jr. And he just wasn't able to space the floor off the ball. And as a result, ended up finding his way to the Knicks. And hopefully long term he can figure it out. But I'm starting to get the feeling that maybe it's just not meant to be for him in the NBA, certainly not at a starting caliber level in the NBA. So this one was definitely really disappointing for me. Number two now, kind of an obscure one, Adreian Payne out of Michigan State, who was drafted 15th in 2014. He went to Atlanta and was traded to Minnesota within a year. So that Michigan State team, just like most of them, had a lot of really good players on them. But I thought Adreian Payne was going to be a really good NBA player for a couple of reasons. One, he had that weird kind of size where it was like, okay, he's big, but he's got a little bit of quickness, a little bit of athleticism. He's not a crazy athlete, but pretty much everything he did was square and it was strong, right? Like he felt like a guy that physically was going to be able to hang very well in the NBA from a quickness as well as a strength standpoint. And then skill-wise, he had the shooting, he had a little bit of passing ability, he could score inside. Really, really long player for his size, and I just thought that his skill set was perfect for where the league was going. And it seemed like in every single game at Michigan State, he was knocking down jumper after jumper after jumper and finishing inside. And I thought that he would be perfect as like, not necessarily a stretch four that's shooting 8 threes a game, but someone that can kind of do everything at the 4 spot scoring wise, not in an elite level, but a really good scorer at the 4 spot. And it just never worked out for whatever reason. I was convinced that he was going to be a really good like 3-and-D kind of forward from like the 4 spot as a shooter and as a defender with that length and his ability to protect the rim. And it just never worked out. And that was one that was like, okay, he's kind of a sleeper, not necessarily a high lottery pick or anything, but someone that I think is going to be really productive. I was just dead wrong. Okay, moving on now to one that is a little bit further back. Anthony Randolph, who was drafted 14th all the way back in 2008. And this is when I first started really getting into like franchise mode and stuff like that in NBA 2K and trying to build up teams. And Anthony Randolph was always a player that was really good, had a ton of potential, and developed well in his first couple of years in the NBA in 2K. And I remember using him a lot. And I wasn't like enthralled with him coming in to the NBA, but once he got there and I got to use him all the time in 2K, it was this long, super athletic front court guy, left-handed, could get to the rim, could shoot a little bit, and was just one of those guys that played really well in 2K. I was like, this guy's going to be awesome. Like, I don't think he's going to be like an all-NBA caliber guy or anything, but he's going to be exciting. It just never worked out. He bounced around to a couple of different teams, never found his way, ended up overseas at various points, and was just one of those players that from a potential standpoint just never got where he needed to. And I don't know if it was his fault or if it was, the coaching staffs that he was at or the teams. It was probably a combination of a whole bunch of different things for Anthony Randolph, where unfortunately, even though he had all of these physical tools and was a pretty skilled player as well, like it wasn't like he was just a crazy athlete, like he had a lot of skills to his game as well, just never found the situation, never found whatever he needed to be successful in the NBA. And that one was really disappointing because he was so much fun to play with in 2K, and I'm sure some of you guys have players like that as well. Next up now is a Kentucky guy that is still on the team that originally drafted him, Malik Monk, who went 11th overall in 2017. And I just remember watching Malik Monk in college. So he came into college from high school with this big reputation as an incredible athlete, an incredible scorer, and someone that could get hot in a hurry, a really streaky shooter and scorer. And at Kentucky, that translated. And he wasn't necessarily the most efficient player in the world, but when he had a big game, he had a big game. I remember there was a game against UNC that year where he was just bombing away from three. Both teams were playing extremely well, and he had a couple of crazy shots down to the end to keep the game close. And I just always remember thinking, man, this guy has that Jamal Crawford, J.R. Smith type thing where like they just know how to score the ball. They just know how to get the ball to go in. They know how to shoot. When they get hot, they're very hot. And I thought that he was the next guy. After Jamal Crawford, it was J.R. Smith, and after J.R. Smith, it was going to be Malik Monk. And when he went to Charlotte, I thought, okay, that's a pretty solid spot. He's going to get some shot opportunities, but he's not going to be forced to do too much and develop all these bad habits early on. And in his rookie season, he never really got the minutes, the opportunities that I thought that he would have given the situation that Hornets team was in and then would be in moving forward. And this was a point at which my channel hadn't really taken off. I remember trying to figure out a way to make a Malik Monk video that wouldn't make it seem like I was crazy for wanting him to play more. And I never made it, but he was always a guy that was like, why not? Like, why not give him more minutes? Why not give him more opportunities? And then at times in his career, when he's gotten more opportunities, he's taken advantage of it. And then at other times, he just hasn't been able to do the right things to be a productive NBA player, whether that's on or off the court, and now is indefinitely suspended by the Hornets. And it's unfortunate because I still think that there's a ton of talent there. And it's just disappointing that he was never able to develop that into anything significant in the NBA. And maybe it'll happen for him eventually, but I really thought he was the next guy in line in that kind of Jamal Crawford, J.R. Smith type mold, and it just never happened. Moving on now to a player that I feel like is going to be someone that not many people remember, but the people that do remember him are going to be kind of on the same page with me here. And it's KJ McDaniels, who went 32nd in 2014. I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly, was originally with the Sixers when they were going through the whole process thing and was one of the second-round pick guys that they were going to develop and potentially turn into something. Kind of like Robert Covington was an undrafted player, got a lot of minutes with the process teams that ended up becoming a good player. And KJ McDaniels was an incredible athlete as a perimeter player, just needed to figure out how to shoot the ball well because defensively and athletically, he did everything else right. And it seemed like he jumped around to a couple of different teams. I feel like he was with the Rockets at one point, pretty confident he was with the Nets at one point. And he just bounced around to all these different teams, and it just felt like a situation where like eventually it was just going to click, right? And it was all going to come together, and it was going to be like a Gerald Green type thing, where Gerald Green came back with the Nets and ended up kind of reviving his career. I thought that was going to happen with KJ McDaniels after things didn't work out initially in Philadelphia, even though he showed flashes. And it just never happened. And I'm still kind of baffled, to be honest, as to why it never all came together for him. Because it was something you see all the time. It was a prototypical, okay, didn't get the opportunity there, but he still clearly has the talent and the athleticism, just needs to figure out his jump shot, and just never got the kind of opportunity that he needed. And KJ McDaniels is a player that I still think could have had a nice NBA career and for whatever reason just didn't work out. And then last up now is another Kentucky player, and it's not uncommon. I'm sure I'm not the only one that has players like this out of Kentucky because they get such talented high school players that you felt like were going to be really good in the NBA, and it just didn't happen. And this one is Terrence Jones, who was drafted 18th in 2012. I believe originally was with Houston and then bounced around a little bit. And I think last year he was in the G League and was kind of tearing it up and almost earned himself an NBA roster spot. And Terrence Jones is a player that I feel like if he was a draft prospect in 2020 would be a little bit more highly valued than he was back in 2012, because he was a little bit of a tweener, a little bit of like a 4 or 5 type guy. You don't really know what position he's going to play. kind of like Julius Randle, but a little bit more perimeter oriented, not so much of a bully inside, left-handed guy. But I always thought that he had a really nice blend of size and skill, could shoot it from the perimeter, could handle it, and was a pretty physical guy. Stayed for his sophomore year at Kentucky, and I believe that was the team that ended up winning the national championship at Kentucky with all the freshmen, if I'm remembering that correctly, with like Deron Lamb and stuff like that. But anyway, Terrence Jones, I thought physically had everything you would need and a ton of skill. And again, like I don't get it. It never worked out. He never found his place, and I feel like he was probably pushed into being a full-time 4 and sometimes even a 3 more often than he should have been, whereas in 2020 he would have been playing more small ball 5 and potentially found some success there. Maybe that would have been a better opportunity for him, as playing more so in the 2020 style of NBA basketball rather than all the way back in 2012. And it was just one of those things where it was like a late first-round pick. Teams, the mid to late first-round pick, teams weren't super invested in him. So once initially it was pretty clear that it wasn't going to be an immediate impact from him, that they just kind of moved on from him, and I believe he bounced around a couple of teams. And like I said, it kind of looked like he was maybe going to get another opportunity there, as he was tearing up the G League last year, I believe, but just hasn't happened for him to this point. Maybe it still will, as is the case for everybody on this list except for Anthony Randolph. But I don't know, it's just disappointing, man, because you get invested in these types of players, and it sucks when they don't work out, and when you feel like you were wrong for believing in them, when you saw something in these guys that obviously made you think they were going to be really good in the first place. And yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. If you have any kind of players like this, I would love to hear your stories about other players that you guys felt this way about. But yeah, that's going to be the end of today's video. I thank you all so much for watching. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.